Of course, you can do that with a different host. So I have started the second instance of the Lightning node. It has nothing to. It does nothing right now. It doesn't listen on any of the sockets. Nothing is happening here. Everything should be initiated with a command line interface. And they are both connected to the same RGB node. It's not required. You can use different nodes, RGB nodes, but here it's quite useful because it simplifies the demo. Now let's do the comments. The first thing that we can do is to put one of these nodes into listening regime, meaning that it will listen for incoming peer connections. So we will use the second node and issue it a listen command. Okay, what it does is basically it starts another daemon, listening daemon, binds to the 00, meaning all the IP addresses with the standard Lightning port. It starts listening there, and we have success report about that it listens for connections. And what we can do now is just get an info about this node. So we see that we are listening through the TCP on this port, and uptime, no peers, no channels, nothing, and the node ID confirms that we are talking to the right node. Also, the interesting thing that we can do a Wireshark session and see what happens there with this TCP port between the nodes. Next, let's connect from the other node. We have it in history somewhere. Yeah, what I need to specify is the ID of the node, and I'm not using the TMP directory, meaning that I'm talking to the first one. So it launches the new instance. So how the command line tool works and how the wallet integration will work is basically you send a command to the message bus, and then you hang around listening for responses. And daemon starts sending you updates on what they are doing. And all these updates end with a special type of message called success or failure, depending on the update. So you listen for different updates until the success message arrives. So the first update was new instance of peer daemon launched with bit ID, and then it got connected to the other node with this ID that I requested on the loopback interface. So we see it here. So the daemon has started. All the daemons put the output to the single console, one next to one. So it initializes connections, hello requests, everything goes all around. They already started doing ping and pongs to each other. So here it got a new request, issued new peer connection daemon. So if we will look into the grep with this cargo thing, we will see that there are an RGB instance, stash daemon, fungible daemon, peer daemon running for TMP directory in the listening mode, peer daemon connected, and the other peer daemon talking to this one. So these two are talking to each other. And if we will see here we will see a lot of traffic going between them. It is a ping and pong requests identified here by 12 and 13 in the Lightning Network message. Okay, simple part is over. Let's see what it will tell us about the info. The second one, it connected to the first one. So we've got a first peer. And if we will talk to the first one, it will report the other connection. So these are two different identifiers, but the connections share the same identifier of the node that is connecting, we are connecting to, and no channels. Okay. By the way, there is really good comments help explaining all the commands that can be issued. Now, how to work with the Lightning node? Well, it's very simple. First, you can put it into listening mode and connect. Next, you can establish channel. And to establish channel, you use it takes 2 stages to do that. The first stage is propose. You propose the other peer a new channel. It's the way the Lightning Network works. You send the request, and the other node accepts, saying that we agree on parameters of the list channel. After that, you create a transaction, and here the command terminates. It basically computes the funding address. Because as I said, we don't have a wallet inside LNP Node yet. You need to do a manual funding of that address. And after that, you issue the second command, which allows you to finalize the channel. And this is named fund command, fund a new channel after the transaction the address was funded. And it initialized channel, it's very unuseful for the human being and command line tool, but it's very useful for wallets which would like to have their own key management and signature management, or use hardware. I don't know why you need to use a hardware device for channel management, but anyway, and especially for channel formation, because for payments you're using in-memory keys, but for funding you're using one-time keys which you are not using anymore, and that's where the hardware device can be handy. So let's do the channel thing. Proposed. So what we propose is to the other peer to create a channel for 1,000 millisatoshis. For now, we are using Bitcoin. Channels are always created with Bitcoins. You can't create a channel without Bitcoin. And the way it works with RGB assets, that RGB assets added to existing channel. You're not creating channel with RGB assets. You're creating channel with Bitcoin, and then you add more and more assets to it. So we propose the channel to the other peer, and we see that reporting is happening. New instance of channel D launched, channel daemon operational, proposing remote peer to open a channel. Channel was accepted. Success, it is ready for funding, and to fund it, we need to transfer funds to this address. And we will see a lot of other traffic that happened between our peers here with 63 bytes. It's pinged. Oh, here, all these messages are going here with all channel parameters. So if we will ask about the information, what's in there, we have this temporary channel ID here, and this temporary channel ID we will use for addressing the channel operations from now on. So they agreed between themselves, everybody happy. Now let's assume we transferred the fund, because as I said, I disconnected from Electrum, and it doesn't verify right now that the transaction is actually mined. It just creates a transaction graph on top of this output, trusting us. But of course, for real usage, you will need to connect wallet and Electrum server to do the funding and verification. But the logic is in there. We just need an integrational part. So let's do a fund. So we fund the channel. First, we are saying a channel ID because it wouldn't work with the wrong one. We copy this, this one, ID. Then we're specifying transaction out point from which we funding the channel. So we need to create this out point with a funding signature and transaction to this specific address. So it should be the transaction having this output should be matching this address. But now it's fake output. So funding channel, channel ID, funding created, signatures created for funding out point, because they know signatures, because basically they know the keys. That's why they provided the address, that multi-sig address that we have to use to funding. And let's see the info. We have now a channel, and the channel has changed its ID from the temporary to the permanent ID. But here we will continue using temporary because internally it's addressed by both of them. We can also get information about specific peer. This is peer identifier. Let's copy it. So we know that it's connected, local socket, uptime, messages, how many messages it sent, and channels which this peer involves, because peer can be involved into multiple channels. And we can also have a channel info. We just need to paste the channel string, not this one, this one. Here we are. We have what we have. We have a local capacity of 1,000, remote capacity of 0 because we funded the channel. No assets yet, uptime, parameters of the channel, and keys. We are using the same keys for now, without just not to bother with the duration. Local keys and keys of the remote peer. And again, there could be multiple remote peers potentially. So remote are always reported as a map of peer ID to the value. Now, the next thing that we will do is we will do a transfer of funds, usually of Bitcoins for now. Usually in Lightning Network, you create an invoice, you send this invoice over some medium, you pay that invoice, and that actually creates the funding. The invoice mechanic is not there yet, and it will be much different because of RGB thing involved. It's not finalized. So for now, we have a simple way of peer-to-peer payment. So that if the payment is direct, not involving the multi-hop payments, we can pay directly to other peer. And today, you can do it with existing Lightning Network. It's not something new. It just nodes do not support that. But here we do support that. And that's what we will demonstrate is actually the function called transfer, and it is used both for transferring assets and Bitcoins, but we don't have assets now, so we will just specify the channel which we will use for the transfer. Here it is. And we will say how many we will transfer. Let's say like 43. Fund and transferred. So here we don't have a success message because we need to finalize something. But if we will look into the information about this channel, we will see that now the local capacity has reduced, remote capacity has increased, and we have this funding transferring 43, sorry, it's not BTCs, I need to change that, millisatoshis, funding transferred, and this node, it doesn't show that in color, but if we will look into the time, 1725.44, 1725.44, update add HTLC. Yeah, we've got that, and we process it, and we've got funds allocated, which we can get by the asking another peer about its status, and it must be some symmetrical to what we just thought. And it is 43 here, and the remote is broken. Okay, something is wrong here, but anyway, probably I need to fix that for the next week. Now, the next thing that we will do is to add RGB funds. For that, we have short way and long way. For the short way, I already created a consignment which I can use. So how the funds are added to the channel. It's very simple. The original plan that we had was much more complex, and the implementation showed that we don't need that complexity at all. Like with the channels, we were planning that there will be a single asset channels, and the channel will be created with RGB asset. But it happened that what we can do is we can fund channel always in Bitcoins and add as much RGB assets as we would land later to it, and it simplifies everything. API, less messages, custom messages, less, we just need a single message type added to the Lightning Network and no customization at all, and it works. The same with the funding. What we do is a normal on-chain RGB funding as usual, creating a transfer to the funding output of the Lightning Network channel. On-chain, sorry, usual without Lightning Network, as we did with the RGB node, we create a consignment and we do that transfer. Here, actually, the transfer that created the consignment, I will just use it with a USD tether, and we will see how it works. We use a refill command for that. help refill. So what refill needs is actually a channel, the path to consignment file, out point, which we use for the funding transaction, and blending factor, which hides the out point within the consignment. It's normal workflow of RGB. Another important thing is that what happens when we do this is one node, the first node that funds the channel with RGB, LNP node, it first of all asks RGB node to verify the consignment and then to merge it into the stash. Then it sends the consignment to the other node, to the other peer, and the peer does the same. Because basically what means the finding of Lightning channel with RGB is that they will have a funds under multisig, two multisig, which is funding output, and these funds are managed by these two peers, and the rest is off-chain transaction graph, which is part of the channel, and the state of that transaction graph is ephemeral, meaning that changing balances doesn't involve any stash-based operations or do not require use of RGB node. RGB node required only for adding funds to the channel. And what you can do is actually you can add many different assets to the channel with a single consignment, but add them to channel operations one by one without risking losing the rest of them, because what you will do is you will tweak public keys with a commitment to all the assets, but the other party would know just about several of them, but it still wouldn't affect the way you tweak the keys. Because the consignment you send to the other party, you can use the zero knowledge and all the stuff that we have in RGB to hide the parts that you don't want to expose, and the other party wouldn't even know which assets are part of the consignment. It will see only the part that you would like to show the other party. But the consignment will be the full, but the part will be you're concealing will be hidden with a zero knowledge. So let's do a refill. I have it here somewhere. Refill, yeah. So what I need to do is to provide a channel ID, which is already different, consignment file, transaction output that I use for the funding, and the blending factor I created during the invoicing, RGB invoicing protocol. I need to make sure that I do have the correct funding output for A5E, Yeah, let's do the funding. And we added to the balance of this USD tether represented by its ID, its backstring here and hexadecimal here, but okay, I will fix that. And we will see that we are transferring here where it says, yeah, request adding 100 of this asset, and the other party received that. And the important thing that we have here is we have validating consignment, adding consignment to stash, and requesting balances. So basically it adds consignment, doesn't knowing anything, LNP node doesn't know anything about RGB at all. It asks RGB node, and then it asks RGB node about the balance on the funding output, and uses that balance for further operations. And at the same time here in RGB node, what we see is 4 operations with this API, accept consignment here by one node and merge consignment. And then by the second node, it does again accept after that and merge. So they both add the consignment to the stash. And it's not a problem that they work with a single RGB node, because the stash work in a way that you can multiple times merge different consignments, even covering the outputs that you are not managing private keys for in a listening mode, and it all works smooth in this way. I know that it doesn't sound easy to understand, but probably I will give another time demo how the stash is actually working and why it's so flexible in terms of information that it keeps and how it presents to the wallets. So, and by the way, we can see the balances because RGB node here configured to use the YAML file to store the cache of the assets. And we can see it in the data directory, testnet, cache, fungible assets. It's not the master data. It just replicates the copy of data to the file, and we will see that we have used each other on this transaction output that now is used for the funding. This is transaction output is a funding output for the channel, and we have hundreds of them, and they are now in channel. Now let's transfer assets from one peer to another, but now this time assets in RGB. Go back in history. We will need to issue another transfer operation, but this time with providing an asset information. Specific asset we would like to transfer here. We have the asset already here, and yeah, also it's another encoding here. It's little endian and here big endian. You see 5997 and here 9759. Yeah, so it's I just need to fix displaying of different encodings for human beings, and I need to specify the channel number. And here I transfer 13 of some asset, and this is the asset identifier, these USD tethers. And funding transferred, transferring 13 of this. Now this time it's not BTC. As you see, before it was BTC transfer. Yeah, BTC. Now this is a different type of asset. And the other party is receiving it. Update HTLC. And it has to report that it has added something. Oh, no, actually it hasn't. It hasn't added. You know why? Because I used a wrong wrong blending factor. Because what it means is basically with RGB, it is very important to provide the blending information. If you don't provide the deep blending information, you wouldn't see the assets behind the zero knowledge. And while it will be in the stash, it wouldn't be displayable for humans, and you wouldn't be able to operate in it. But wait, just a moment. Let me check that. Yeah, the blending factor is correct, actually. Let me check the balance, because I think the transfer has happened. The info is no. Info of the channel state. Yeah, so we have asset here added to the channel, capacity in Bitcoins and balance in asset, which was 100 and now it's 87 because 13 of it was transferred to the remote body. And that's basically the transfer operation. It's not involving RGB node anyhow at all. As I said, it's all done in memory. Basically, you create a state transition, an anchor for that state transition. You commit to that anchor by tweaking the public keys of the commitment transaction. But because the commitment transaction is not yet published on chain, you just keep the transition and anchor as a part of the state of RGB extension of channel. And that's all. You don't need to add it to stash at this moment. You will need to add it to stash only when the channel is closed. And because we use HTLC, the same mechanics will work for multi-hop transfer and payments. It's the same mechanic for single hop and multi-hop and Lightning Network. The only reason that to do multi-hop payment, we need to finalize the routing daemon, which is not finalized, and do invoicing implementation, which is not there yet. But in general, we are here. If we will see the processes that are running, we will see a lot of them. But as I said, this all processes peer daemons, two instances of channel daemon, one from each party, fungible stash. But again, if you use that in mobile wallet, it will be a single process with multiple threads. Or you can put these processes in separate Docker instances and do Elastic Cloud in Amazon something, because these instances can be configured to talk to each other through end-to-end encryption, and nobody will be able to listen to their traffic. And end-to-end encryption will be based on the noise protocol used by Lightning Network, even for internal inter-daemon communications. I think that's all for the demo today. Everybody is quite tired. We've been 1.5 hours already. And there might be questions, some. I will be happy to answer to them. I will probably stop the screen recording.
Impressive, Maxim. Very well done job, and I'm very happy to see this working. I have probably a few questions, but I think I will ask them in another context because we already more than 2 hours, so I don't want to open. But in general, this is huge. I was very skeptical and scared by the idea of creating a new implementation of Lightning from scratch, but now as a byproduct of this effort, we also have another Lightning implementation, basically, which is fine. So very, very good job.
Thank you. Thank you, Giacomo.
Yeah, it was a long meeting, so yeah, I also want to thank you and say it looks really cool. I'm probably gonna have to go back and watch the video again because it's hard for me to parse everything all at once.
Yes, for sure. And there are much more things that need to be explained other than I talked today. So I think there will be a long process when we will be talking and explaining to developers the integration part and to business owners how it actually can be used in real world cases and how the workflows with the payments and everything can be built around that. Any questions from others?
Not a question, just a kind of thinking out loud comment. Since, like Giacomo pointed out, and you have been talking about a lot of this call, we have a Lightning implementation here. Like, maybe we need to start thinking about ways to grow the LNP community and have that kind of narrative a little bit separate from the RGB narrative, because it's just going to become, I have a feeling it's going to become like more and more of a dependency for the people that use RGB, and like having wallets have to support both LND and both LNP, and you know, there's a lot of weird situations that crop up if you want to support RGB on Lightning, but want to also support normal Lightning, and it would be nice, you know, to have the ideal of only having to support one.
Yes, I do agree, and I have few thoughts about that. First of all, we really would like to see LND, not LNP hours, but Lightning Labs LND adding support to RGB. And first of all, the demo that I did and the node that I did shows that it is possible. And I know exactly how it can be done. Now I understand what have to be done with the Lightning node to add RGB support. And I will be happy to cooperate with them. And if they have interest, they will definitely need to get RGB supported by LND because it's the top market player having the most of the market. The second, yes, LNPD is separate from RGB. It is designed in a separate way, and it can work without RGB at all. It even don't operate concept of RGB asset. It operates concept of asset, which can be liquid asset, Litecoin, whatever Lightning Network is supporting. And RGB is one of the category of assets it supports. That's very important. So it's not RGB focused and RGB centric even. And in terms of code base, it is completely independent from RGB. And you can compile even the core library without RGB flag, and you wouldn't get all the RGB related code at all. So it's a standalone node, and we really need more community to start contributing to its development. One of the reasons I did so big demo explaining the structure just to raise an interest in the development community, because, and I hope we have a good chances because people are eager to play with DLC, with L2, with the taproot, with everything, and they don't have a tool. This is a tool for them to play. in a very simple way. And we already started engaging those developing DLCs to invite them to contribute and start building this node together. And that's why we have, that was the vision we discussed with the Giacomo more than a year ago. And that's why LNPBP Standards Association is named LNPBP, not RGB, because RGB is one of the protocols and one of the products we are managing, like RGB node and standards, but also what we do is a more broad thing, and LNP node is another initiative that is managed by the association, and there are already proposals to improvements of the Lightning Network aside from RGB by it. So we hope that will help to engage community, even those parts which is not interested in RGB or assets at all.
Well, I think that Ryan Gentry was here for part of the call. I don't see him now, but I've been talking to him regularly, and I know that Lightning Labs at least has intention or positivity towards at least learning how RGB works and what they could do to support it. I don't know how practical it is for them in the short or even medium term to make real moves towards that, but I know that I can talk to them, and we can kind of, I think I'll need to talk to you separately and talk to them as well to kind of figure out how to create a situation that can actually be cultivated where that becomes a reality, because it's going to take coordination across all these parties.
Yeah, let's discuss this next week. Also, I would like to discuss with you and others the roadmap for further launching of the whole story, because it's already time to start integration. Of course, it will take a bit longer to finalize LNP Node and get something that you can go live with a value of assets on it. But again, I think it will take at least 2 or 3 months to get the wallet done and integrate it. And this time will be more than sufficient to get to the production ready version of LNP Node. Yeah.
Well, I'd say take the next week or two to do the cleanup and do things the way you like, but let's put on the docket at some point a special meeting just for integration purposes and with less people and not having to bother everybody with details.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very happy that 2 weeks ago we did an RGB release, meaning that at least we don't have to fight two front lines at the same time, because it was really hard throughout these 2 months, because I was finalizing some parts of RGB and doing the LNP next. And now RGB is finalized. And well, there is always thing you can improve with integration and everything, but it's not like all the core functionality, validation, everything is there. And the most of the effort will be now focused on Lightning Network part.
Yeah, I know that Bifinex is playing with the on-chain RGB, and I'll check in with them to see how what their feedback is and how that's going, and that could and we're doing the same thing on our side, just starting probably this week and next week to recheck and play with RGB on-chain integration. And then hopefully that will sync up, when we can have our broader integration call and start talking about the LN aspect of it. And I have another guy starting that we've hired that starts on the 19th, and he might be able to help you with that. I know you have some lack of talent on the iOS side, and so we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And I also would like to mention that I'm very happy that over the last months, we've got new contributors to core RGB. And most of them are on this call. Right now, we have more than 5 people contributing to different parts of the code, especially parts of the integration, because it's always hard to contribute to something core. And I was showing quite abstracted APIs in Rust, but it's much easier to contribute to C bindings, Node.js bindings, Android bindings, and this process already started with RGB, and it goes. And over the next month, we will be releasing a new RGB SDK, updated with all these new developments that happened in Lightning Node. I will backport many useful things to RGB Node and make a part of the SDK. And hopefully the same will start happening with the Lightning Node part as well.
Yeah, I'll
But we need
add,
more talent.
in the context of, like, say, getting Lightning Labs to be, wrap their head around this and be able to review something, I'm almost certain that what they're going to want is two things. They're going to want some kind of way to, like, easily know which code to review and what to review, like, among all this architecture, and not have to dig through all of the kind of theory and of how we got here. And then they're going to also want some kind of typical modern docs to go through, like these nice like doc API websites that people are used to having. I can provide you some links of examples of like what people are expecting, but you probably know even better than me.
Probably to add to that, there are actually currently 3 people that are actively working on providing the documentation for developers that want to use the technologies. I don't mean the historical information. I don't mean some broad understanding of what technologies enable, but the particular README files, proper documentation on how to set up nodes, how to work around them, how to play around with Docker files and everything like that. So we have 3 people working on that currently, and I'm pretty much sure that like whatever Lightning Labs might need, we can provide that within the following weeks.
Well, there is very important thing to remember. There is a huge difference between documentation for Lightning Labs and documentation for wallet developers. It's absolutely different worlds, because wallet developers, they need to integrate with LNP Node and RGB Node. Lightning Labs, they need to integrate with the core library without integrating with the nodes at all. Absolutely different APIs, absolutely different integration point. And the task for Lightning Labs is much harder because they need to use Rust code from the Go language internally in the LND node. And right now, we don't have any docs for that because basically this part is uncovered. And yeah, we were focusing on integration with RGB and LN Node for wallet developers. But it's very different when you integrate RGB into existing Lightning Node.
Yeah, I mean, on the doc side, it sounds like what you're working on will be great for wallet integrators and people like us on our side. But yeah, I don't really know for sure on the doc side what Lightning Labs sounds like. Maxim knows better already. But I think maybe the core milestone for getting Lightning Labs to be able to seriously do this is them having some kind of body of code that they can easily review. And so they can wrap their head around what RGB is and see whether like they even like basically a review of RGB, so they can be sure that it works and doesn't have any kind of major flaw that we missed and this kind of thing.
I think the most useful would be after finalizing these current releases in a month from now, I will focus some of my time on writing the full RGB specification on chain and Lightning part. That is not like standards, which are hard to read, but kind of white paper stylish specification explaining the technology of RGB. And it will, together with the code, this will simplify the job. But I really think that the fact, if they would like to integrate RGB, we will need multiple calls with them, with their developers, and I also will be digging into their existing LND code and providing some suggestions, because without that, it will be really hard for them to get into integrated.
I'm going to link an example of what would be like, this is a shitcoin, but what some people have told me the kind of docs they're looking for when they're trying to research IGB.
Okay.
Cool, thanks. Igor, you wanted to speak also?
Yeah, so since we're talking about Rust and Lightning, so my question is, what's up with the guys who do RDK, Rust Development Kit? I wonder if you're doing like duplicate jobs, so either RGB team is going to, no, probably not, but maybe RDK team is gonna throw away their Rust code because yours is better, or what's up with that? How do you compare?
Well, I can speak about this a little bit because Alekus was in the chat. He just wrote me that he disconnected 10 minutes ago. So we have a strong connection of the BDK people right now, less than a connection, a little bit more friction with the people working on the Lightning Network Rust implementation so far. But the base BDK effort is basically now led by the same guy that was working with Maxim before, that was Alekos. So it should be reasonably easy to make the communication smoother and to avoid redundancy when possible. Sorry, Maxim, I leave to you the rest of the answer.
Unfortunately, yes, the architecture of the code is very different, so it can't be merged at all. So you have to choose to use either one system and the second. And while you can use LNP node as a pure Lightning node in your wallet, and there will be SDK around it, there are very different design criteria. With Rust Lightning, they're trying to do SDK to build your Lightning node. Here you have complete Lightning node to embed into your wallet. It's a very different approach. Again, would we contribute to Rust Lightning? Probably not. I was starting to, but basically it's very different code style, and they're trying to go through very hard refactoring. And it's always when you need to do a complex product, and if you need to refactor the whole code, sometimes it's easier to start from scratch. If they like to adopt the existing code that we have, well, it's mid-license, open source, and we will be happy because we need more contributors working on this thing. And that would be actually great if we would be able to find any way of upgrade of Rust Lightning to use some of developments that we had. So we are very open to that.
So do you
Maxim,
think RDK will be eventually compatible with RGB?
Rust Lightning, no, you can't make it compatible without rewriting most of it.
Okay, so yeah, basically it feels like a throwaway project. Like it's just another Lightning node, and RGB with LNP node is like a totally new game, totally different game.
Well, I spent about a month trying to integrate RGB into Rust Lightning, and I understood that I will get too much legacy, not saving a time. So for sure, you can do something if you spend enough effort, but it wasn't reasonable. So I think that I wouldn't say throw away. Well, there might be different uses where somebody already using it. But I will be happy if the stuff that we are doing will be used by more developers, because it will help to finalize it further. Because Rust Lightning have today much more Lightning functionality than LNP node. It is the question that it's much easier and faster to add new functionality to an LNP node than to add or modify any existing of Rust Lightning. So it's different trade-offs. Giacomo, you were saying something also.
Yeah, nothing fundamental. You already basically said it. The difference is in the generalization of LNP node. One of the possible things that I could imagine, but I don't know if it's just if this is realistic or not, is that maybe the code of some specific implementation that is modular enough because it has been added on top in a modular way. In the future, that could be more easily ported. So, for example, if they develop a specific Rust library only for autopilot or only for summary swoops, that I guess that a great part of the job which abstracts away the Lightning functionality and adds more stuff, that probably can be easily ported on top of the different architecture. Maybe, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, pieces maybe migrated. The difference in architecture can be explained simply in the following way. In Rust Lightning, the code that manages processes and workflow of the data is not separated from the code of standard parts. So when you need to, it's a very different concept. So what I try to do with LNP node is to separate workflow of the data and any management of the storage and everything from the core standardization part, and make standardization part modular and make workflow universal. In Rust Lightning, there is a very specific workflow used throughout the library, and the standards are embedded and threaded through it. And when you try to modify something, you will basically, when you need to add one feature, you will end up modifying code in 50 files in 50 different places. And instead of writing one single piece of code in one place, that's the difference.
Martin, you have a question also, I bet. Go ahead.
Sure. I have a few. So first question is, do I understand correctly that LNP Node manages the other daemons?
It's not directly manages, it orchestrates. So there is a broker concept in the distributed computing. It's not a broker. It's a different form of manager. It just starts some of the daemons, and they can be also started without it. It happens in very specific cases, like when there is a request to open a channel, multi-peer channel, there should be somebody who will start a channel for multiple peers, and that will be LNPD, for instance. So it's not directly compatible to the C Lightning, to the Lightning daemon in C Lightning, which is a broker, classical broker. Here, LNPD is not a broker, but it's kind of manager of certain functionalities.
Right. So if I were to integrate it into operating system, then the reasonable thing to do would be to make systemd to control LNPD, and then it's done.
You mean like a system daemon? Yes. Yes, you can
systemd, yeah.
Yeah. You need to start LNPD, and you can use LNPD to start other daemons. But like you can do it that way, but you are not limited to that way. So if you need to spread around LNP Node across geo-distributed services, you can run like even different channels for the single connection can be distributed across different services. So while you can make it a part of a system daemon, you can also make it a part of a cloud. You are not limited by the bounds of a single computing instance.
Okay, right. What was the other question? Yeah. So LNPD also manages the bus.
Yes. Well,
okay.
Zero Message Queue manages the bus, and depending on the
right,
setup,
but like
yeah.
It binds the port, right?
Any daemon can be the first one to bind the port.
Oh, interesting. So like, and
you can launch them in different sequences. You can if you will use Zero Message Queue, because it's right now a default mechanism, but in the future you will be able not to use Zero Message Queue if needed. But right now it is the default mechanism. The management is done by Zero Message Queue thread. You have one Zero Message Queue thread per, it's by the library done. We are not managing it. And you can configure Zero Message Queue to be as a queue, meaning that you can bind a socket which has no other party, bind it to it, and it will wait for the other party to bind. Or you can configure it that there is certain party that should bind it, and the others will be able to bind only when that party is present. And it can be done through configuration options, basically daemon parameters or command line parameters.
Right. So now
you can.
Now it supports both modes or just one of them?
Both modes.
Okay, that's interesting. I
it's a
think
single flag.
That's all so far. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions, guys?
I think everybody is tired.
Igor, just go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I remember Electrum team, they did their own Lightning implementation, and they said it took them 1 year. So I'm curious to compare the scope of work of Electrum team and LNP Node. So what's the limitations of LNP compared to Electrum implementation? Because it's obviously 2 months versus 1 year.
Well, first of all, LNP implementation is not completed and not ready for production. For Electrum Lightning, it took 1 year for them to test everything and launch in production. And I remember that on the Lightning conference, the presentation of that, and it took a year from the moment when it was developed. So it's more about their quality assurance cycle and the way that they would like to make everything is made correctly. Another point is that with Electrum, they were spending more time on doing the user interface and refactoring the user interface. Here, there is no user interface development or refactoring being involved. And the last point is that, well, I'm a strong believer, and I'm trying to explain that through all our presentations, a call into a proper abstractions and architecture. And I was very inspired by Peter Todd, who actually had the same ideas, and he supported that direction, which we took originally with LNPBP Association when we made it, that we spent 2 months on writing a proper API and architecture without any functionality there, just refactoring and polishing the API, abstraction layers, separation of concerns, everything, until the stage when it works perfectly. And then it will take few days to implement the actual business logic when the architecture is done right. Otherwise, you can spend years and years writing code, and it will be unstable. You are not able to manage it. So there are different approaches. I'm not saying that Electrum is a bad approach, no how at all. They're perfect developers, but abilities of system development language like Rust with existing huge library like Rust Bitcoin, Rust Miniscript, huge community, and Python language inside the user interface GUI-based wallet, it's completely different development cycles, and you can't simply do what you have to do in order to make a rapid application development in Python with Lightning, what you can do in Rust with the whole Rust community and the libraries which are out there.
Yeah, what about some edge cases which Electrum Lightning can handle and LNP Node cannot, like routing? Or you were mentioning that the closing of channels is not really finished, or some edge cases during closing channels is not finished?
Yes, not finished at all. So what we have right now is a core system architecture with a few workflows implemented. Like we have 100% of the system architecture done and 20% of Lightning Network functionality required for a proper release. Why it's not so it's not comparable to its alpha. Well, alpha in terms of functionality. Why it's but why it's not a problem? Because this 20% of functionality was developed over the last 2 weeks. So to add to the 100%, it will take months or 2, depending on the number of contributors and amount of time I can be spending on that. And we will have complete Lightning implementation. So with this architecture, as I was showing you, just here you need to write that piece of code. Here you need to write that piece of code. So it's easily parallelizable, and it's more than doable. But right now, it's not like Lightning implementation you can launch on your machine and operate your own Lightning channel. No. It will take another few weeks to get to that stage.
Well, okay then. So next question is, I'm looking forward to try out RGB SDK. So I'm curious, when do you think it will be developers ready, and when we will start doing developers onboarding, like talking to different developers and convincing them to try it out and maybe roll out to production?
Well, the SDK is developer ready, integration ready. We will be updating it with recent developments in the next 2 weeks. But there is a difference between readiness and we are talking to other developers, because the moment we start talking with other developers, I have no time for other stuff. And that's why, first of all, I'm happy that there are more and more people from community involved in understanding how RGB work, and they already start supporting those developers who are already integrating with RGB, and it doesn't require me to answer each question. But I wouldn't really engage a large wallet developers community soon, just because to spend the team efforts to be able to complete and advance the functionality as much as possible.
Do you have some specific time frames in mind? Like, say, in 3 months, we're gonna be closer to working with developers or so?
We will be doing a roadmap. What's next? As I said, this is not ready. We need to have a call with all parties who are involved in financing this, the association, and understand their priorities as well. So depending on that information, we will prepare a public roadmap where we will point out their priorities and availability for external integrational efforts. Because as you said, for instance, we need to get RGB into LNP, LND, and it will be already a huge project, but it's very important to have it, because if the RGB will be in LND, many wallets already using LND, they will get RGB support through that. And the huge, well, RGB wouldn't be successful if it wouldn't be in LND, because it is the most of the market. And I doubt that LNP daemon that we are doing, even if it will be completed and go live in half a year from now, I doubt that it will take years to get the market size. And we need to get adoption and boost adoption of RGB as soon as possible. So the LNPD integration, LND, these names are really confusing. We need to do something with that probably. The Lightning Labs daemon, it's one of the priorities clearly, which we will try to force as much as possible. And the second priority is, of course, is getting Bitfinex integrated and doing USD Tether on that, and getting the initial set of wallets we're already working with to do a support for USDT and RGB. That will be initial priorities, plus completion of LNP daemon that we are doing. And after that, we will be ready to engage the broader community, unless it will not only depend on us, because many people joining the team, and if we will have more contributors and more people understanding RGB and explaining, like already happens, we can do that earlier than that with the help of community, not like a centrally organized company, but as a, well, I hope that some companies will provide a consultancy based on RGB, how to integrate them, because I would frankly say that it's not my job to consult everybody how to work with RGB. Clearly, I need to develop technology, and I have my own business to run. So I will boost the adoption, but it's not a proprietary project that is owned by me or by Bitfinex, and we are kind of doing endless support for everybody trying to use it.
So I assume Bitfinex is aiming to launch Tether on RGB as soon as possible. So how can other wallet add support for that?
Basically by using RGB SDK. That's the short answer. And the roadmap with RGB SDK, we have already version we start to integrate with. There will be update in the next 2 weeks, I think. And after that, it will be more or less stable. I mean, there no big upgrades are required. So once it's there, it's there. And we are preparing the documentation, the sites that will be explaining the integration. We have already example applications, and all wallets that are integrating with RGB today, they are open source wallets. So again, the code will be exposed. And of course, there are multiple public channels where you can ask questions, IRC chat, Telegram group. And even if I don't have a time, because I wouldn't promise that I will spend significant amount on answering questions if there will be a lot of them, but we have many community members already doing that. So just write the questions, and it's high probability that you will get an answer and support.
Martin, you also had a question?
Yeah, I have another question, and that's if I understand correctly, that currently the blocks or transaction outputs are all made up and it's just in the RAM, or is there actually some connection to actual Bitcoin reg test or something like that?
Well, transactions output are real. It's just that the transaction are not, the funding transaction is not verified for being mined into the blockchain, but the transactions are real. The second thing that is not verified at this moment, the signatures are not created or verified because the signature process is technically is not part of LNPD, so we will be doing a separate wallet which will simplify the user testing. But anyway, for wallet integration, it's not needed at all over exchange. So that's how it works right now.